You know, I had a bit of an epiphany the other day. Apparently, Donald Trump really isn't as bad as everybody seems to say. And that's evidenced by the Democrats just making crap up.
Trump once again used brutal, incendiary rhetoric to describe immigrants. Here's what he said yesterday. Listen.
It's a border bloodbath, and it's destroying our country. They're country-changing, country-threatening, and they're country-wrecking. We're going to end up with the largest deportation in American history. They're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals. I'll use the word animal because that's what they are. We don't want them coming into our country with contagious diseases, and they have it.
And so part of that, and that was Wolf Blitzer on CNN. And the best part of that segment was that Wolf was actually called out by one of his guests. And a lot of those statements are either true or completely taken out of context. Now, I was talking earlier about how I'm old enough to remember when CNN and Wolf Blitzer were actually legit news anchors and a news channel. But see, here's the thing, is that it's like day after day. What do? We find them taking Donald Trump's words out of context. I mean, this is, of course, the latest one.
The Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
Yeah, and that, again, the Biden-Harris campaign, I guess, tweeted out that very deceptively edited 7-second clip when in reality, Donald Trump wasn't calling migrants animals. He was very specifically talking about the one animal that killed Laken Riley. Here's the entire clip in context.
A student in Georgia who was barbarically murdered by an illegal alien animal. The Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals. And Nancy Pelosi told me that. She said, please don't use the word animal, sir, when you're talking about these people. I said, I'll use the word animal because that's what they are.
Yeah, I mean, so the only thing that I can believe is that Donald Trump isn't nearly as bad as the left likes to say because they keep having to make crap up. Now, Matthew Hurtt is joining us, our Grassroots political analyst. And Matthew, that's the only thing that I can come up with is that they are grasping at straws and trying to make Donald Trump out far worse than he is by making stuff up.
Dan, it's great to be with you. And 2 years ago this month, the Joe Biden White House announced the creation of the Disinformation Governance Board. I know you remember it. A lot of your listeners remember it. They were going to root out disinformation, misinformation. This board was repealed, rightfully so, because of outrage. But it seems that the Democrats are selling disinformation and misinformation and purposely telling lies and taking video out of context to scare voters headed into this general election. And it's absolutely outrageous, but we're only going to see more of it this year.
Do you think, though, that people are falling for this? I mean, here's the thing, is that, remember a couple of weeks ago, you and I spoke about this, Matthew, where we were actually, you and I were laughing, I believe, on the air about how they tried to spin that whole bloodbath comment, trying to say that Trump was threatening political violence when in reality, I mean, fact check, like 2 minutes. It was like, no, he was talking about the automobile industry. Do you think that these kind of attacks by Biden and his partners in the media, do you think this is actually having an impact on the electorate?
Some people will see through it. Some people will say, oh, no, look, the media is doing this again. But some voters in the suburbs who don't pay attention to politics that much and maybe won't tune in until August or September, these stories will have an impact on the total narrative about what they think about Donald Trump or what they think about the election. And so it is important for conservatives and for people who are out there knocking on doors and talking to voters to take back or to articulate the truth about what Donald Trump is saying and what Republicans believe. Like I said, a lot of voters, this will go right past them, but some voters, especially those who tune in late in the game, this will have an impact on their decision.
So last couple of days, Matthew Hurtt joining us, Grassroots political analyst for Nashville's Morning News. So I know that you know this. There was some data that came out, a poll, that Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in the swing states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, apparently tied in Wisconsin. And this was from the Wall Street Journal. Jill Biden said this.
When these polls, like the Wall Street Journal one, land in the White House and he's losing in all the battleground states.
No, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming up, and he's even or doing better. So, you know what? Once people start to focus in and they see their two choices, it's obvious that Joe will win this election.
I mean, I don't know about you, but is she delusional? I mean, she sounded very, I said earlier, it sounds like she's channeling her inner Nancy Pelosi.
When these polls, like the Wall Street Journal one, land in the White House and he's losing in all the battleground states.
No, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming up, and he's even or doing better. So, you know what?
Well, I don't know where she's getting her numbers. It's like, she's a poll denier. Not that the polls make all that much of a difference at this point, but what do you think about Jill Biden?
So her argument is incorrect, but her premise is curious, because essentially she says that, a lot of people aren't paying attention yet. And she's right in that point. That said, if independents have to make a decision heading into the election on who's better on the economy, who's better on national security, who's better on immigration, we know that people are thinking about immigration and safety and security right now. Independents and undecideds are definitely going to break for Donald Trump on those issues. And so I think that as voters tend to focus in on the election again later in the cycle, they're going to have to think about what issues they think are important. It's safety, security, the economy, and immigration are what's important right now. And I think that Donald Trump holds an edge over Joe Biden on that.
One of the interesting things that I'm watching is Joe Biden. He seems to be a candidate in search of a message. Now, we already established that these attacks on Donald Trump, where they're taking his words out of context and accusing him of, threatening political violence, I don't believe that is working, at least not right now. This is Joe Biden the other day.
We have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. I mean, this is from the bottom of my heart. We're united. There's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. We're the only nation, as a student of history, that I can find that's come out of every crisis we've entered stronger than we went in.
I would disagree with him on that last part. I don't believe that we are stronger than we were going into COVID on the way out. We're clearly out of COVID now. But I guess the question is, for Joe Biden, it's like that's a retread comment that he made a while ago, and he's going back to it. It's like the same intonation, the same emphasis on, particular words. And it's just like he's trying to throw messages out there to see what sticks.
Joe Biden's messaging is going to be two items here. We're going to, quote unquote, save democracy. This is the threat or the specter of a January 6th happening again, and all of the elements of that. And he's going to play to various left-wing messaging points on abortion, on trans rights, on any of those, the sort of social warfare that he's waging and the left is waging across the country. Those are the two big messaging points. And what he hopes to do with those is scare up enough folks on the left and suburban types who are nice and well-meaning people, but they don't really understand the issues as much, who will go out and vote for him because they are scared of the specter of what the right could provide. And I think that is that's not a great position to be in here several months headed into the summer and headed into the general election. It's not an optimistic message, despite him trying to make it one. And I think the independents are going to look at Donald Trump more closely in this election.
Well, it is interesting because I guess he's trying to sound optimistic on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's a little hard to be optimistic these days when there's so much that is going on regarding the border and crime, the economy. Things are still more expensive. We are engaged right now dealing with not one but two different wars. We, of course, have the failures of Afghanistan and so forth. In other words, I get that he's trying to be optimistic, but the reality of Americans is all of the things that I just mentioned. On another path, I've got CNN on in the studio, and they're talking about how Donald Trump right now is with his team, and they're trying to craft the best abortion message that they possibly can. Trump has been on record as saying there should be exceptions for an abortion. Woman's life is in danger, and rape and incest and these kinds of things. I mean, Trump has come out and said there should be exceptions. I don't remember exactly what he said about 12 weeks, 6 week. I don't know what he said about that. He's kind of waffled a little bit on that. How important is the abortion message in this election, and where do you think Donald Trump is going to land?
We tried this in Virginia in the last election. The governor, Governor Glenn Youngkin, attempted to go on offense on pro-life messaging and abortion messaging, and it remains to be seen how that actually played out. Again, this messaging is targeted to suburban women, primarily white women, and it is unclear how Republicans are going to tackle that. I think what we have to do is personalize the issue, is talk about it from a personal perspective, especially with female candidates. We saw Nancy Mace go on offense on this issue on national television a few weeks ago. But I think we have to humanize it and personalize it and talk about it from the perspective of someone who might be in that position, and say that we want policies that respect human dignity and human life at every stage, from the unborn to the mother to the community around that mother. And I think if that's the optimistic message, if we talk about providing opportunities and resources and care for those women in need who are considering abortion, I think that is a winning message for Republicans.
I'm going to play you a comment that Newt Gingrich made on Fox News last night, and I think it pretty much surmises where the Democrat Party is right now.
The weird elements of the Democratic Party are now dominant, and they live in a fantasy world. And the only way they can survive is convincing the rest of us that their fantasy's okay.
I mean, what a great comment by Newt Gingrich. I'm not always a big fan of some of the things that he says, but, I mean, he's spot on there. I mean, we could go down the list of, men playing on women's teams. The border is open when it was actually closed. I mean, it really does seem like the Democrats do live these days in a fantasy world, and they do expect all of us to buy into those fantasies. And if you don't, well, then you need to be destroyed.
Yeah, I think that we're living in a time where people are increasingly living in ideological bubbles. And we see it in New York and D.C. and in urban centers where the left primarily congregates, and then everywhere else, which is a majority of the country, lives in a different place ideologically and geographically. And that's really unfortunate because we actually, when we understand the other side more, when we understand them better, we're better able to make arguments against a position, or at least to come to some agreement or respectful disagreement. I'm pretty conservative, and I live in a county where 80% of my neighbors living in dead voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And I appreciate that because I have to go out and make a nuanced case for conservative principles out in my community to attract voters or to hear people out. And it's something that I value in living here. But not a lot of people do that. People on the left don't do it. They do it in big cities, and they shelter themselves from conservatives. And conservatives, by and large, live outside of those big cities, and they don't interact with liberals. And that's a problem for our constitutional republic.
So I got a pretty big compliment the other day, and I don't like to talk about when people compliment me on the on my on-air work, and it always feels weird. But somebody said the other day that they loved listening to the morning show because their kids are in the car, and despite the occasional train wreck, by and large, we are incredibly conservative, and we have a lot of fun. But the point was that this particular parent was talking about trying to raise his son conservative and trying to instill those values. And I think that if they're listening to this show while taking the kids to school, I think that is a great thing and it is a great responsibility. But the point I'm making is that you're involved in an event that is coming up later on this month, and it's a great event. And what it's doing is it's giving parents the tools necessary and the guidance to teach their kids those conservative values. So talk a little bit about that and how people can get tickets.
So I'm looking at the agenda right now, Dan, and this is the first time that I've spoken about the agenda with you on this, but we've got Friday and Saturday, Friday, April 19th and Saturday, April 20th. We've got exciting panels on community and coalition building for activism. This is, parents or homeschool communities or people who are involved in public schools. I've got Chairman Mark Green talking about the importance of education, a number of other panels on messaging. So if you are a parent with kids in public schools or in the homeschool community, or you are thinking about running for school board, or you're a school board activist, or you serve on the school board, Leadership Institute's Learn Right Summit is coming to Nashville, the JW Marriott, on April 19th and 20th. And we encourage you to come out and be part of that. If you go to leadershipinstitute.org, you can find it under the training tab. I'll be out there. I'm super excited to come back and be part of my community and share this experience with you guys. But this is the front lines of saving the country. Yep. It's in our education system. And we see moms and dads across the country who are taking control, taking an increased interest in their child's education. And we hope to channel that energy and enthusiasm and principled approach to education into action through this Learn Right Summit.